Yeah, I think we can start. So welcome everyone to tonight's section. So we'll be looking at visualizing data in Power BI. So we'll look at different kinds of charts and how to create them in Power BI. So before now, we've looked at the different steps of the Power BI workflow. Look at how to connect data with Power Query, clean and transform it. And then we looked at how to model our data, create relationships, and then build DAX measures. So now we'll look at the next step in the Power BI workflow, which is to visualize. So this is where you try to use charts to answer your business problem. So for each chart type, we'll look at what they are used for and how to interpret them. We'll look at some real life examples, and we'll also look at how to create these charts in Power BI. So first, let's look at table visuals. So we'll look at the normal table visual. We'll look at the matrix visual. We'll also look at the heat map, which is a form of table visual. So first, for the table visual, right? In Power BI, this is a simple and effective way to display data in tabular format. So if you're familiar with Excel, right? By default, Excel is you have rows and columns, right? So it allows users to view and analyze data in a spreadsheet-like format, just like Excel with rows and columns. So you might not know it, but every day we interface with data in table formats. So you can see an example for finance, right? This is like data on cryptocurrencies. So you can see the rank, the name of the cryptocurrency, the price. Also in sports, you can see the Premier League table. You have the club name, number of points, and number of wins, etc. You also have example in health. So you can see the rank of a country, the country name, and the index score. So we come across table visuals every day. So for table visuals, what are the pros and the cons? So for the pros, the table visual is simple and effective. It's simple to create. And since most people are familiar with Excel, right, they can easily interpret what the data is showing. You can also easily analyze data with tables. And then you can also format tables with custom colors, etc. And then it also offers flexible data filtering. So you can filter different columns for particular values. Now, some of the cons for the table visual is that it's hard to find trends or patterns in large amounts of data. So it's commonly said that if you want to hide information, put it in a table. So you have several numbers, and it's difficult for the brain to find patterns in all those numbers. And then also for table visuals, they have limited visual appeal. So compared to other kinds of charts, right? It doesn't have much aesthetics. Then it also have limited interactivity. And lastly, it's not suitable for hierarchical data. So data where you have order and hierarchy. Table visuals might not be the best for those kinds of visuals. So when should one use a table visual? When you want to sort data by one or more columns in ascending or descending order. When you want to filter data by one or more columns. When you want to group data, you want to apply conditional formatting to your cells. When you want to show or hide columns. When you want to add a total row to your table. When you want to drill through to detail data. When you want to show data for different kinds of aggregations, you use a table visual. So now we'll look at how to make a table visual in Power BI. So this is a sample table visual. You have states, category, and sum of profits. So now I will navigate to my Power BI desktop. So this is a continuation of the last file we worked on. So this is my when you come on here, right, these are my fields, right? My different tables, measures. So over here, let me annotate. So over here, right, over here, you'll see the different kinds of visuals. So if I hover over each one, right, you'll see the name pop up, right? Stacked bar charts, stacked column charts, etc. And somewhere down here, right, you see the table visual. So when I zoom in, this is the table visual. So I can simply click on this table visual. So I come on here, click on it, and you see it drops a table visual on the canvas. So before I go into creating table visual, I want to just go through this view, right? So this is your Power BI desktop, right? This is the reports view. This is where you create your charts and apply formatting and all those stuff. And then this is the data view. So here, this is where you see your tables. So I click on tables, right? You see the table preview. These are my tables, custom dates, location, extra, etc. And this is the report model view rather. We'll look at this in previous sections. So here, right, you have a home tab where you see some buttons to do a couple of things, which we'll see in a bit. You also have an insert tab where you can insert visuals from here also. And also you can insert elements like shapes and other custom elements. You also have the modeling view. Okay, you can add tables, measures, etc. You have the view tab where you can use this in your design process, right? So you could use bookmarks, which you will see later. You could use selection pane. You can also check your grid lines, for example, or snap objects to grid, for example. They also have the help tab. So here you could once you're on the internet, right, click on the links, check out training videos, documentation, etc. Then you have format tab and data grid, etc. So I come onto the Viz thing, right? This is the visualization thing where you have these visuals. I come on here and click the chart I want, table visual. So it comes on here. So next thing I want to do, I want to look at let's look at from the slide that I showed us. You have state category and profit. So let's do that. State category and profit. So my table, I'll just make this bigger, expand the edges. I'll come onto the fields view. That's over here. And the states, they are in the location table. So I'll come on here and choose the state here. So I can click on the states and drag it to the table column view. So I drop it here, right? And the states appear. Or once this is highlighted, I can just click on the state value and it will add to the table automatically. So I click on this and it also adds there. So I have state from the location table. I also want to add category, and that's from the products table. So I'll come to products and I'll click on category also. So you have 3 different categories. So for each state, it's showing the category. This is Alabama. You have furniture, office supplies, and tech in Alabama. You also have furniture, office supplies, and tech in Arizona. So each state is just showing the 3 different categories for each state, right? So I want to look at the profit for each of these categories in each state. So I'll come on to the others table. Others table. This is where I have profits. This. So I'll click on these also. Profits. And here you can see my values, right? The states, category, and the profits. So you can go on to do some custom formatting. So once you click on the visual, right, on this V pane, you'll see your visuals. This paintbrush icon, when you click on this, you will see several options to format your visual. So if I click on this paintbrush icon here, so I see several options to format my visual. So for example, the style presets, I could click on this, you see different table designs, right? I could choose bold header. It changes the table design, right? Personally, I prefer this minimal. So I could choose this, right? And you have the design, minimal design. You also have other options, create value. So I won't really go into designing this, right? I'll just do some pixel edits. So I come to the values. I'll just make this bigger. So I increase the font size, make it a bit bigger. And the same thing to the headers also. I'll come to the column headers and make it a bit bigger also. I'll also make this bold. So you can also do other formats, other formatting, right? You could add colors and other stuff, but I won't go into that now. So this is your table visual. So maybe one thing I'll just do, you can also change the outline. So if I come to the format pane, right? These are visuals. When I click on general, you'll see additional formatting options. If I come down to effects, I could add a visual border, for example, and I could make this, I just make this 20. So it has rounded edges. Yeah, something like this. So this is my table visual. I can see the states, the category, and the sum of profits. And you can add more fields, as many as you want, to this table. So back to my slide, I think we've seen a table visual, state, category, profits. So next, let's look at the matrix visual. So this displays and analyzes data in a grid format with rows and columns. And the matrix visual in Power BI is similar to the pivot table in Excel. So if you're familiar with pivot table in Excel, then it'll be easy for you to work with the matrix visual. And it allows users to group and summarize data in multiple levels of detail. So let's see an example of the matrix visual. So here you have this similar to, let me see. Mic check, you all can hear me, right? Someone says you can't hear me on the chat. Just type in the chat if you can hear me. And for those asking, yeah, this is being recorded. Okay, awesome. This is a matrix visual. And yeah, you can see categories, right? So let me annotate. So you can see these are like summary, right? New, open, in progress, open deal, unqualified, etc. And now I want to look at the values for each of these different fields across other categories, right? So for new, for example, I want to see the B2B value. I want to see the biomedical value. I want to see the consumer value, right? Just like that. So this is similar to a pivot table where you can put a category on the rows and another category on the columns, and you can look at values across each of these categories, right? So this extends the capability of the table. For the table, you just see columns and values. But for the matrix visual, I could look at values for a category across another category, right? Just like a pivot table. So let's look at the pros of the matrix visual. So it offers you flexible data aggregation. So you can aggregate data across several categories compared to the table visual. Also, you can carry out easy data comparison. So you can compare data, right? Since you can compare categories, so you can compare data between multiple categories. And unlike table visual, this is great for hierarchical data analysis. So you can look at data in hierarchical formats with the matrix visual. And lastly, you can also carry out conditional formatting with the matrix visual. And the cons, right? So it has limited visual appeal, limited data insights. So there's a limit to what you can do with the matrix visual. And it also has limited interactivity. And it's hard to find trends and patterns in large amounts of data. So when you're trying to group data, summarize data, filter data, drill through, show or hide columns and rows, format and style your matrix cells, and show data in hierarchical way, and also in a constabulary, then you use a matrix visual to do all this. So let's see a demo how to create a matrix visual in Power BI. So now the same table we just showed previously, right? We'll try to visualize in a matrix, and we'll see how easier it is to interpret the data compared to a table. So back to Power BI desktop. So I'll call this page table visual, and I'll make a new sheet. So here I'll come onto the V's pane, right? This is the table. Next to it, you'll see the matrix visual. So similarly, I'll click on this, the matrix visual, and I bring it to the canvas. So I can add my fields. So I had state from the location table. So I'll come on to location and click on states. And next, I also had category. So if you look at the V's pane, right, on the rows, you have states. So you also have the option for columns. So this is basically the value that will be on the columns, right? So in this case, I want to see the state values by category. So I'll add category to, or before that, let me add the profit values, right? So we have values here, right? This is a numeric field. So I'll add a numeric field here, and that's the profit. So I'll drag profit to the values and drop it there. And you see, right, it shows you sum of profits. So now I can see the states by profit. This is similar to the table that we did earlier, right? But now I want to aggregate this. I want to have the category on the columns. So I'll come on here and drag category from the product table. I'll drag that to the columns. And you can see, right, it now breaks down the profits for each state by category. So for example, Alabama, I can see that furniture has about 1,231 profits. Office supply has 1,257. Tech has 3,297. In total, you have 5,786. And when you compare this to the table visual, right? So here you are having repetitions. Each state will repeat 3 times to show the category: furniture, office supplies, tech. But the matrix now has simplified it. The categories are now on the columns. So I just have one row for each state. And it's easier this way, right, to interpret the data. So I can also do some formatting here, but I'll just keep that for now. So let's go on to the next visual. So the next visual is the heat map. So what's the heat map? This is a graphical representation of data that uses color coding system to indicate the magnitude of a particular value. So it involves color coding your data, and it allows users to visualize data in a more intuitive and easy to understand way by using color to represent data values. So this is an example of a heat map, right? So similar to the matrix, right? You have values on the rows and columns, but now you also have colors, right? So a heat map is just like a matrix, but then you use color to format and color code the values. So here you have product category, you have region, and then you're seeing colors, right? The colors help you to easily identify patterns in the data. So let's look at some pros of the heat map. So it's easy to understand and interpret. So the colors help you to pick patterns easily. You can also effectively highlight patterns and trends in large sets of data. You can also identify correlations and relationships, and it can be used to represent data in different formats, including geographical data, numerical data, and categorical data. And the cons are it can be difficult to read data if it's not properly scaled or the color scheme is not chosen correctly. So where you have outliers, right, it might alter the color scheme, right? So it might be hard to interpret or find patterns in those kinds of data. And then it may not be the best choice when you have small number of data points. It can also be misleading if your data is not properly labeled or if the heat map stands alone, right? So usually you use the heat map alongside other visuals. But if you have the heat map alone, it might often be misleading. And then there are people who have visual impairments. So the heat map, right, the colors, right, it might be inaccessible for them. So people who have maybe color blindness or other visual impairments might find it hard to interpret data from the heat map. So in addition to the matrix visual, right, these are all the same uses of the matrix visual, but then you can also use this, right, to change color scheme to represent data better, and also use different scales of color, e.g. continuous color scale or discrete color scale. So let's look at how to make a heat map in Power BI. So here we have week of year and also the weekday, and we are showing some values across this. So let's see how we can do this in Power BI. So open up Power BI desktop. So I'll call this the matrix page. So before I make the heat map, right? I said the heat map is a matrix that's colored, right? So currently I have a matrix. So what I can do is I come onto the formatting options and I put off the totals, right? So I'll come on here, I'll put off column subtotals and row subtotals, right? And let's see what happens when I do that. So I put this off and I put this off also. So I've taken off the totals, right? Because I don't need them for what I want to do. So once I have this, what I can do is let me make the values larger. So values, I'll make this larger. And same with the headers also. I'll make this larger also. I'll make them bold. So you can do several other formatting, right? But that's not the focus of this lecture, just to show you how to make charts. So this is the visual. I want to turn this to a heat map, right? So if I click on this matrix visual, what I can do is I'll come on to the VS pane, right? The values. So I'll click on this drop down here on the values. So I click on the drop down and you see these options that pop up, right? Several options pop up. And down here, you see conditional formatting. So you have different options: background color, font color, data bars, icons, and even web URL. So you can link values to links, right, on the web. So I'll choose background color as an option. Background color as an option. This opens up this tab. And on this tab, so format style, you could choose by gradients, by rows, by field value. So most times, if you want to get the best results, right, you can write a DAX function that breaks down your data into different range of values. and you assign colors to those ranges. Because most times by default, you might not get what you want. So you have to customize your data, use a DAX function, right? But for this, I'll keep it simple. So I have format style, I'll use gradients, apply to values only based on profit, yeah, sum as 0. So the lowest value will have a light blue color. That works. Then I'll also add a middle color. So I'll check this box that says add a middle color. For the middle color, I'll assign it a darker shade of blue. Maybe I could use this, for example. And highest value would have a darker shade of blue, something like this. So once I have this, I can hit OK. So you can see, right, these are done to like a heat map. You have colors. The values are not color coded. So I can easily see, for example, in California, right, I have high profits for office supplies and technology. But before, you'll be hard to see that pattern or that trend, right? And when you scroll down also, you can see, right, in New York also, I have high values, high profit values for office supplies and technology. So with the heat map, right, it helps you uncover patterns easily compared to the matrix. So you add colors. So I will make another heat map from scratch. So this heat map. So what we had on the slide. So for the heat map, right, I'll add a matrix visual as usual. A matrix visual. And here I'll come on to the date table. The date table. And for the rows, I'll add the week number. So week 1 to week 53, I think that's what you normally have. So I'll add the week number, right? 1 down to 53, yeah. And then I'll add the day of the week. So Monday to Sunday, right? 1 to 7. That will be the columns. So I'm trying to see across each week, right? And each day. I want to see if there are any patterns. Maybe Mondays have a dark color, or maybe a particular week has a darker color, right? It means there's more profit for those weeks overall. So this can help you see some interesting patterns. Yeah, so I have this. For the values, I'll put the sales values up. So I'll come on to the other table and I'll add sales. So add sales, right, to the values. So I'll put it on the values here. So I think there are decimal places that are messing up the numbers. So I'll click on the sales value, come on to column tools, and this box here, that decimal places is auto currently. So I'll type in a 0 and say for the sales value, I want to have 0 decimal places. So if you look at the box, right, you have decimal places 0.73, etc. So I'll put 0 here and hit enter. So I think all those values, all decimals, they are off. So I can expand this to make it look cleaner. Yeah, this looks better. And like before, I'll take off the totals. I don't need that. So turn off total for column, total for rows, turn it off also. So I have my values, week number, and in the columns I have the weekday 1 to 7. So what I can do is type presets. I prefer the minimal design. I can make no need for this. So I have my matrix, right? What I can do next is to add the colors to make it a heat map. So I'll click on the matrix visual. I'll come down to the values, sum of sales, click on the drop down there, right? and it opens up this tab. So I'll come on to conditional formatting and I'll choose background color. So the same drill, right? Add a middle color. Come on here, choose it's light blue and make it a darker shade of blue and hit OK. So I have colors here, right? So most times you might not want to show numbers. You want to just have the colors without the numbers. So for this, the same drill, right? You come down to your values, sum of sales, click on the drop down, come on to formatting. And now instead of background color, I'll choose font color. So I want to change the font formatting. So I choose font color and apply the same formatting to it, right? So that way it will just apply the color to the other numbers and they won't be visible. So I'll choose the same color for this and the same color for this, a dark blue, and hit OK. And now you can see, right, the numbers are no longer visible. So this is my heat map, right? So when I scroll down, for example, you see that it looks like compared to the beginning of the year, right, and middle of the year, looks like you have more sales happening towards the end of the year. These are darker. You have more dark spots compared to the early spots, for example. And if you customize this, right, with a DAX function to segment your data into ranges, right, you will have better color spread and you can see more patterns also. But we won't go into that now. So these like heat map, right, in Power BI. Just add colors to a matrix and it turns to a heat map. So let's go back to the slide. So now let's look at bar and column charts. So we'll look at the stacked bar chart. We'll look at the clustered bar chart, the 100% stacked bar chart, stacked column chart, clustered column chart, 100% stacked column chart. So in Power BI, right, when you say bar chart, it refers to horizontal bar charts. When you say column chart, it refers to vertical bar charts. So I think examples will make it clearer. So let's look at the bar chart. So when you say bar chart, right, in Power BI, like I said, it means the horizontal bar chart. So a bar chart uses bars to represent different categories of data. And the length of each bar represents the magnitude of the data for that category. So an example of a bar chart, right? You have this chart showing you the 10 richest football clubs in the world in 2023. So you see, right, this is horizontal. So in Power BI, when you see bar charts, you're referring to this kind of chart, right? Horizontal charts. So this is a bar chart, right? So what are the pros of a bar chart? So it's simple and easy to understand, effective for comparing data across different categories. It can be used to show changes over time. It's not perfect, but you can use it, right, for small time ranges. And they can be more space efficient than column charts. So compared to the vertical bar charts, right, when you have several categories, then a horizontal bar chart is perfect for that kind of scenario. Then the cons are it can become cluttered and difficult to read. If you have too many bars, it can also be misleading. So if you use the wrong kind of scale, right, or wrong labeling, it can easily deceive people, right, and it will mislead them. They won't really understand the data you're showing. And also, it can be hard to interpret if the bars are not sorted in a meaningful way. So it's best to have the kind of sort, either from the highest to lowest value or lowest to highest value. That way, it's easy to understand what you're trying to represent. But if it's random, it can be hard to interpret the values. And they may not be accessible for people with visual impairments, right? So these are some cons of the bar chart. So for the bar chart, right, you use them when you want to graph nominal variables. So nominal variables are variables like name, right? Name of a product, for example, or categories, right? Or subcategories. So when you're grouping things, right, categorically, but there is no order involved, it's just default. There's no order involved. That's the nominal variable. For example, name of a product, right? So you have several products, Adidas, Nike, etc. There's no order involved. I can't say Adidas is bigger than Nike or Nike is bigger than other brands, right? You just group them and show your values. There's no order. But compare it to a scenario where I'm trying to maybe graph size of clothes, for example. So I have large, extra large, extra large. It's still a grouping, right? But there's an order involved. Large is bigger than medium, for example, and extra large is bigger than large, right? So that's an ordinal value. But nominal value means there is no order involved, right? So when you have nominal variables, no order involved, then a horizontal bar chart is best for that kind of scenario. And you can also use it to compare data across different categories, display the composition of data, and also display data when the chart needs to be more space efficient. So let's see a demo how to make a bar chart in Power BI. So we have some of sales by region. So I'll go on to Power BI desktop and we'll make a bar chart. So I make a new sheet and I'll call this bar chart. So the same drill, right? I'll come on to the VS pane and the very first chart you'll see, right? The stacked bar chart. So I'll click on this stacked bar chart. I'll bring it to view. So I can make this a bit bigger. So I want to look at sales by region. So I'll come on to the location table. That's where I have the region. And I'll bring in region to the y-axis or click on it, right? By default, it goes to the y-axis. So it won't show anything yet until I add a value. So I want to look at sales by region. So I'll come on to the others table. Upon this, and I'll bring in, I can just click on sales, right? Click on sales, and by default, it goes to the x-axis. So you have sum of sales. So now I can see sales by region, right? And when you hover over each one, you'll see the region, the sales, right? Just like that. So to make this easier to read, I could just come on to the formatting pane, and for the x-axis, I put off the title. It's just best practice, and put off the names also. And I'll just turn on the data labels. And instead of millions, I'll make it thousands. So I'll come to values and change this to thousands. So 725K, that's better. So similarly, I can also come on to click on the chart and come on to the y-axis and put out the title also. Yeah. So the region there is not really useful. West, east, central, south tells me already that there are regions. So that title region is not useful there, take it off. So sales by region, right? This is the bar chart showing me that. So let's go back to the slide. So we've made a bar chart. Let's look at the stacked bar charts now. So the stacked bar chart is a variation of the bar chart and is used to display the composition of data. So you have a bar chart. You want to show the different maybe categories or subcategories that make up or compose that summation, right? A stacked bar chart is great for those kinds of scenarios. So each bar represents a category and is divided into segments that correspond to different subcategories. And additionally, the length of each segment represents the proportion of the data that belongs to that subcategory within the overall category. So you have your normal bar chart, but you then break them into subcategories, right? So we'll see a visual that better explains this. So example of a stacked bar chart, right? So you have this chart here showing you male age structure. This is a bar chart, right? But now you see that you now have subcategories. So for example, if you look at the United States, right? The very last bar, the blue color is showing you what 0 to 14 years. And then the orange color is showing you 15 to 64 years. And then the gray color is showing you above 65 years, right? So it's a bar chart, but you now break it into what subcategories. So this is a stacked bar chart. You stack categories on top of each other on a bar chart. So some part of the stacked bar chart, right, is effective for displaying the composition, like we saw in the previous slide, right? You saw different age, 64 years and above, 14 years, etc. They all make up the large whole, right? So the different compositions are displayed. And then you can also use it to compare data across different categories. And it provides a clear and easy to understand visual representation of your data. And it's easy to create and customize them using Power BI. And the cons are it can be cluttered and difficult to read if you have too many bars, or if the bars are not properly scaled. So if you have several different categories, imagine you have 100 different categories, for example, and then you have, for each one, you have 4 subcategories. It may be hard to understand data, right? And also they can be misleading if you have a wrong scaling or labeling. And it can be difficult to interpret if the bars are not sorted in a meaningful way, either by size or category. And lastly, it might not be the best choice for representing data with large number of values or complex relationships. So for the stacked bar chart, you use this when you want to break data down into subcategories, or data is understood best when compared side to side, or is understood best when viewed horizontally, or you want to represent data in a compact format, or you have long labels and it will be hard to read them on a vertical bar chart. So use a horizontal bar chart, right? In those scenarios. So let's see an example of making a stacked bar chart. So you have sales by state and then categories. So let's see how to make this in Power BI. All right, come on to Power BI desktop. I make a new reports page. So this report page is right, similar to how you have sheets in Excel, right? You have different report pages. So it's similar to that. You can make several pages. So I come to this page and I'll call this stacked bar chart. And so the same chart we used previously, right? The exact same chart, right? Stacked bar charts. I'll bring it in again. And here I want to look at sales by states. And also for each state, I want to see the category breakdown for each state. So I'll come onto the location table. This is where I have states. So I'll bring in states to the y-axis, or click on states, right? That works also. So you choose your visual and click on states. Currently, I won't see any visual until I add a value. So I come onto the others table and I click on sales. And you can see, right, this is now on the x-axis. And I can see the visual breakdown, right? Sales by state. So these your bar chart, right? What we had in the previous slide, the exact same thing, the bar chart, right? To make it stacked, you now have to add values. So I click on the chart, you have to add a legend, right? So what do I want to break this chart down by? So for each state, I want to look at the breakdown of categories, right? I want to see office supply, I want to see furniture, etc. for each state. So in this case, right, I'll come onto the visual and I'll bring category from the product table. So I'll come to the product table and I'll put category, right? Category on the legend. So I'll come on here and click category and click on the legend. And you can see, right, this now breaks down the visuals. So for each state, I can now see the breakdown of all the different categories. So you have furniture, office supply, tech for each of the states. So I'll just do some formatting, data labels, and the x-axis, I'll put up the title and put the x-axis off also. And y-axis, I'll also put up a title for the y-axis. This looks good. So currently you have several states, right? You need to slide down. So maybe let's say, for example, for this report's sake, I want to just show the top 10 states, and their breakdown by category. Click on the chart. So I'll come on to this here, right? This icon here, filters. I'll click on it. So here for the states, I'll click on the state drop down. I want to show you top 10 states. By default, you have basic filtering, right? Basic filtering. So this means I can come here and choose a state, for example, and it will show you those states I select, right? Basic filtering. I'll just clear this. I'll clear all the filters. So instead of basic filtering, I will change this to top N filtering, right? Top N filtering. I want to see top 10 states. So I'll come on here and click. I'll type in 10 here. Top 10 states, right? Show top 10. By what value? By the sales. So I'll come on here and bring. So I could use the sales, right, from the measure table we made last time. Or I could use sales from the others table also. Either of them would work. They're the same thing. So I'll bring in sales to the values here. So I'm saying this table I have here, right? Filter it and show me the top 10 states by sales. So it means that I should see California down to Virginia. That's what I want to see on this chart. So I come on here and to effect the change, right? I'll click on apply filter. So apply filter. And you can see, right? It has now filtered my charts to the top 10, California down to Virginia. The rest are filtered off. So this is your stacked bar chart, right? So easily I can see. Let me just do one more change. I can change this from millions to thousands. Yeah, so I can see the breakdown, right, of the sales across each state, and also see the composition for each category. So for example, right, in California, tech has the highest value. Then you have furniture and office supplies, etc. So these are the stacked bar charts. So when you compare it to the bar chart, the bar chart, right, there's no value on the legend. This is empty, right? No value here. So by default, it's a bar chart. But when you add a legend to the stacked bar chart, right? So here you have a legend category. So you now have what's this stacked bar chart here. Let's go back to our slide. So let's see the next chart, the clustered bar chart. So the clustered bar chart in Power BI is a type of chart that compares values across multiple categories. It consists of multiple bars that are grouped together, and each bar represents a specific category and its corresponding value. So let's see an example of a clustered bar chart. So here you can see profits and discount values, right, by product. So for product one, the blue bar is profit, the orange bar is discount. Product two, right, the same thing. So instead of stacking the values together, they are now what's broken down, right? So each one has its own bar. instead of stacking it together, each category would have its own bar. That's a catch with the clustered bar chart. The pros, right? Effective in comparing relative sizes in a category. Easy to read and understand. Can be used to compare multiple categories at a time. And it's useful for showing differences or similarities between data points. And the cons, it can become cluttered and difficult to read if you have too many bars or have an improper scale. It can also be misleading if it's improperly labeled or if the scale on the axis are not equal. It can be hard to interpret if the bars are not sorted in a meaningful way, and may not be the best choice for representing data with large values or complex relationships. So the clustered bar chart is when you want to compare relative sizes of different data points in a category. Used to compare multiple categories at once, e.g., sales figures for different products, right? And also used to show difference or similarity between data points, like comparing average salary of different positions in the same organization. So let's see a demo how to make a clustered bar chart, right? The same chart as before. We'll just change it to a clustered bar chart. So let's go on to Power BI desktop. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this previous sheet. I'll right click here, click on duplicate page. And I'll call this clustered column chart. All right. And for me to change this to a clustered column chart, yeah, so for me to change to a cluster column chart, right, I'll just click on this chart and I'll come onto the V's pane. So currently, this is a stacked bar chart, right? And when I go 2 steps further, I have the clustered bar chart. So I'll just click on the clustered bar chart. So I'm saying change it from the current chart, stacked bar chart, to the clustered bar chart, right? So I click on this. And you see, right, it has changed the chart from the stacked bar chart to the clustered bar chart. And I can go back to the previous step, right? Click on this. It goes back to the previous one, right? So depending on what you're trying to report, right, you can use the stacked bar chart or the clustered bar chart. So for the stacked bar chart, right, it's difficult to compare values. As opposed to the clustered bar charts, where, for example, I can see the length of bar for each category. So easily I can see that furniture in California is the highest, right? Followed by New York, followed by Texas. But with the stacked bar charts, you might not easily know that, right? So if you have a mixture of values, right? For example, furniture is high in California. It can be high in a different state also. You might not easily compare them compared to the clustered column chart. So it depends on what you're trying to report, but you just compare them and find the one that works best for your end user. So there's a clustered column, clustered bar chart, not column chart. Let's look at the 100% stacked bar chart. So this used to show the relative proportion of different categories within a larger whole. And for the 100% stacked bar chart, each bar in the chart represents part of a whole, right? And the segments within the bar represents the different categories that make up that whole. So each bar represents a whole that's 100%. The different segments then represent the different categories that make up that whole. So let's see an example to better illustrate this. So the segments are shown as percentages of the whole, and the total height of the bar is always 100%. So an example is this, right? This is like a survey. Do you have a clear sign of the term job equality? So you can see breakdown, right? For each of the different values, you see the breakdown, and they all always sum to 100%. All the bars are equal. They might have different values, right? But then they will all treat them as what? 100% each. So you just see the breakdown. So this is yes or no. For the very first bar, this category, financial services and lending, they all answered yes, 100%. The next one, you can see the breakdown. 99% went for yes, and 1% went for no. So you can just see the breakdown, right? They always add up to 100%. That's the catch with the stacked bar chart. So you just show the categories, just show you the percentage that they make up for the total. So this is 100% stacked bar charts, and the pros is effective in showing the distribution of a single variable across multiple variables, across multiple categories rather, and is useful for comparing the relative proportions of different categories within a larger whole. And the 100% stack bar chart, it allows for easy comparison of the segments within each bar, and it's useful for showing data with a large number of categories or segments. And the cons can be difficult to read if you have too many categories or segments. Also, they don't show actual values, only proportions. They show you only percent of total. You won't see the actual value. And it can also be misleading if the segments not add up to 100% for each bar. And lastly, it's not suitable for showing negative values or changing values over time. So you use this, right, to show distribution of a variable across multiple categories, and also compare the relative proportions of different categories within a larger whole, and also show the proportion of different subcategories, how they change across different categories for a large number of category or segments. So a demo, let's make the 100% stacked bar chart in Power BI. So you have the same chart, right? States, and then sales, right, by category. But we'll now turn this to a 100% stacked bar chart. So I'll go on to my Power BI desktop, make a new sheet. I'll call this 100% stacked bar chart. So I come onto the view. So I could copy these, right, and edit and change it to what I have currently. But let's just do it from scratch. So I come onto the V's pane, right, and here I have the chart, 100% stacked bar chart. So I'll click on it and bring it to the view. So currently I want to show the same chart as before, sales by states and category. So the y-axis will be states, location table. I click on states, and the values will be sales values. So you can see, right, it's all showing you the same length, even though they have different values, but the same length for each bar. That's 100%. So the next thing, right, for the legend, I'll bring in the categories to the legend. Right, so you can see this. And what I can do is to put on data labels on. Yeah, perfect. So here I can see for each state, right, the percent that each category accounts for. So in California, furniture accounts for 34.1%, office supplies 31%, tech 34.8%. New York, furniture is 30%, 28 for office supplies, and 41 for tech, just like that, right? So it shows you how each category makes up the whole. That's a 100% stacked bar chart. So let's go back to this slide. So let's do the column chart, right? So in Power BI, column charts refers to your vertical bar chart. So a column chart is a type of chart that displays data as vertical bars of varying heights. And each bar represents a data point, and the height of the bar corresponds to the value of that data point. So let's see an example of a column bar chart, right? So here you can see this bar here, right? Showing you countries and their oil reserves. So you see Venezuela, Saudi, Canada, etc. So the pros of the column charts is easy to understand. And also is effective for comparing values of different data points and showing changes over time. So as against the bar chart, right? With the column chart, you can show data trends over time, right? Since it's vertical, you can show trends over time. And you can also show both positive and negative values. And lastly, they are useful for displaying a large amount of data in a compact format. And the cons are they can be difficult to read when there are many data points or when the values are very close together. Also, complex data is difficult to show on a column chart. And depending on how you set the axis, right, and the scales, it can be misleading. And also, it often requires additional explanation. So you need to add extra notes in some cases or explain better what it signifies. So the column chart is useful when you want to graph ordinal data. So previously I mentioned nominal data and ordinal data, right? So when you have nominal data, use a bar chart. When you have data that has order, right? So for example, you're grouping age groups 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, right? Those kind of range, get an order involved. So you use the column chart for that kind of scenario. Or years, right? When you have years, you want to group sales by years, for example, the column chart is useful in that scenario. So you use a column chart for ordinal data and also use to show change in values over time. Also use the column chart to display large amount of data in a compact format. And lastly, you can also use a column chart to show both positive and negative values. So let's see an example of how to make a column chart. So you're looking at sales by year. So let's go to Power BI desktop. So I'll make a new sheet. I'll call this column chart. So I'll come onto the V's pane and I'll click on Stack Column Chart. So I'll make this larger. So I'll come onto the date table and I'll bring in year. So I come onto where I have year on the date table and I'll choose this year. So I'm looking at sales by year. So I'll come on to, so currently, since year is numeric, right? It's bringing year to the y-axis as a sum, but that's not correct, right? That's not correct. I want the year to be on the x-axis. So I'll just come on here and I'll click on the value of year and drag it up. So I click on this and drag it to the y-axis. So it should now align very well, right? So what I can do is come onto the orders table and bring in sales. This is my numeric value. That will be on the y-axis. So I put it here. And I can now see sales per year, right? 2014, 15, 16, 17. Just like before, we can come on here and do some formatting. So y-axis, I put up the title, put up the y-axis in general. This year is not needed. It's the year 2014 to 2017 already tells me that it's a year. So I don't need to put a title there again. Just take it off. And I'll put data labels on. And I'll make this to be in thousands, not millions. So values, put it as thousands. Yeah, cool. So I have my bar chart, right? Sales by year. And you can change the sorting if you want to. Currently it's showing you 2014 to 2017, right? That's perfect. But you can change the sorting. Maybe you can sort by the values instead. The highest value to the lowest value if you want to. So let's go on to the next chart. So the stacked column chart, right? So the stacked column chart is a variation of the column chart, and it used to compare contributions of different data series to a whole. So in stacked column charts, data points are stacked on top each other with the height of the bar representing a total value for the data series. So example of a stacked column chart, right? We have this value here, this table here. So in this chart here, you have months, the x-axis, and you have monthly sign-ups by country on the y-axis. And you can see different subcategories, right? Australia, that's the navy blue. You have Europe, I think that's sky blue. And you have North America, right? So these are all different colors showing you different categories of data as a stacked column chart. So let's see some pros. It effectively shows you path to whole relationship, can be used to compare proportion of each data series, can be used to compare data series over time, very important, and can display large amount of data in a compact format. And the cons, right, can be difficult to read when you have several data points. Hard to compare values of individual data series. Can be hard to compare different sections of the bar when they are of similar size. Less effective when data range is large. So use a stacked column chart when you're comparing path to whole relationship of different data series, when you're comparing proportion of each data series, when you're comparing multiple data series over time, and display a large amount of data in a compact format. So let's see a demo of how to make a stacked column chart in Power BI. So the same chart, right? We just modify it. Come on to Power BI desktop. I'll duplicate this sheet. So save time. I'll just call this stacked column chart. So from what we're saying, right? Without the legend in the column chart, when you add legend, it becomes a stacked column chart. So I'll come on here, I'll just add a legend to this, right? So I'll come on to the product table and add category to the legend. And Viola will have a stacked column chart. All right, so you can see for each year, you can see the subcategory, furniture in blue, office supply in this darker shade of blue, and tech in this orange color. So that's a stacked column chart. Let's go on to the next kind of chart. So let's look at the clustered column charts. So this is a variation of the column charts used to compare multiple data series by displaying them side by side. In the cluster column charts, each column represents a different data point, and the columns are grouped by category or time period. And each group of columns corresponds to a different data series, and the color or pattern of the column indicates which series it belongs to. So let's see an example of a cluster column chart. So you have a cluster column chart showing you values by year, and the colors correspond to the continents, right? So you have Europe, North America, Asia, and you can look, each continent has its own bar for each year, right? That's a clustered column chart. So the pros, effective for comparing values of different data series side by side, can be used to compare multiple data series over time, allows for easy comparison of data points, and can be used to show both negative and positive values. And the cons can be less effective for showing the patterns or trends in data, can be difficult to read when there are several data points or when the values are very close together. Also, as the data set keeps increasing, it gets confusing and makes it difficult to compare more than one data at a time. Also, it can be less effective when you have a large data range. So let's look at when you use a clustered column chart. When you're comparing values of data series side by side, or you're comparing multiple data series over time, you're trying to show difference in values of multiple data series. I want to show both negative and positive values. Use a cluster column chart. So we'll make a cluster column chart in Power BI, right? Using our current data set. So I'll go into Power BI desktop quickly. So I'll duplicate this. And I'll call this clustered column chart. So I'll just click on this and change this to a cluster column chart. I come onto the this pane, right? It's currently the stack column chart. I'll click on cluster column charts and it should change to a clustered column chart, right? So you can see each category in each year has its own bar. As against being stacked together, right? Each category has its own bar. So that's a clustered column chart. So let's look at the 100% stack column charts. Used to display relative percentage of multiple data series in stack columns. So here, right, the total cumulative of the stack column chart always equals 100%. So an example, right, you have this. So each bar, right, all the bars are equal, they all equal 100%. And you can see for each year, right, you can see the proportion of each continent for each year as a percentage of total. So the pros, right, you can display multiple categories and data series in compact space. You can show path to hold changes over time. It allows for easy comparison of segments within each bar and useful for showing data with a large number of categories or segments. And the cons, difficult to compare all of the first series. Also, it does not show actual values, only proportions. It can become visually complex as you add more categories or series and not suitable for showing negative values. So you use the 100% stack column charts when you're displaying categories that's changing over time, or you're showing the relative percentage of multiple values in stack columns. So let's see a demo, right, to make a 100% stack column chart. So I go on to Power BI desktop. So instead of doing from scratch, I could just copy this and bring it here. And I'll just come on to the view. And currently, this is a cluster column chart. I'll choose the 100% stack column chart, right? So I choose that. So currently, it's not showing me the percentage in the appropriate manner. I need to reset this, take off category, let me see, and bring it back. Let me see if it resets. No, it doesn't reset. Let's do it from scratch. So I have here from the date table. I have sales on the y-axis. Let me do it from scratch. It's retaining the formatting of the previous charts. Let's do it from scratch. So I have here from the date table and sales from the orders table and category and the legend. So I come onto the formatting and put on data labels. Yeah, perfect. This looks correct. So it should show you as a percentage of total, right? And when you add together, it should all add up to 100 for each column. So this checks out. So this is the percent stack column chart. Let's go on to the next chart. So here, let's look at line charts. Look at line charts, area charts, and then we'll go on to the next and last section, which is maps and plots. So I come on here, right? A line chart is a type of chart used to display series of data points connected by straight lines. And it's often used to show trends over time or to compare multiple sets of data. So let's see an example of a line chart. So you have this chart showing you life expectancy across the years, right? So you have from 1770 down till 2015. So it's useful to show trends over time as a line chart. So the pros, they are good for showing trends over time or across categories, can display multiple data sets on the same charts, making it easy to compare them. They are simple and easy to understand, making them a good choice for presenting data to general audience. And the cons, they may not be as effective for displaying data that has a large number of distinct categories data points. Also, can be difficult to read if there are a lot of data points. And lastly, they don't show distribution of data as well as other charts, e.g. histograms or box plots. So when you use a line chart when you're trying to track changes over short and long periods of time, you're trying to visualize data when you have many periods of time being measured, use a line chart. So let's see a demo. We'll look at sales over the months, right? Trend of sales over month. Maybe you can add a category also. Let's go to Power BI desktop and do this. I make a new chart for line chart. So I come onto the V pane, and when you come down here, right, you see the line chart. So I choose that line chart, and I bring it to the center and make it larger. So I want to look at trend of, let's do trend of profit over time. So I'll come onto the dates table. I'll bring in month to the x-axis. So by default, right, it will show you a hierarchy, year, quarter, month, day. But I don't want this. I want just a month. So I'll come on this drop down here. And I'll come down to where you have this hierarchy. I'll choose the month itself, end of month, that's what I'll choose. So I want the month itself, not the hierarchy. So I choose the month. And next I'll come on to the others table, and I'll choose sales as the values. So you can see trend of sales, right, over time from 2014 July down to 2017 July. So I want to look at this across different categories. So I could just come on. So you can also add other values, right? I could look at this with profit also, for example. So it's showing you multiple values, right, on the same line chart. Even though it might look complicated, but then I'll take it off and just leave that there. So next, let's say I want to add a legend to this. So I'll bring category to legend. And we'll see lines for each category. So the blue line, right, is showing you trend for furniture. The dark blue line showing you trend for office supplies. And the orange line is showing you trend for technology, right? So you can customize the line charts as it suits your analysis. So let's go back to our slide. Let's look at the next chart, which is the area chart. So that's like a variation of the line chart, right? So is a specialized form of a line chart. So instead of just a points, right? You fill in the region with a solid color. That's the area chart. So let's say an example. So you see it's similar to the line chart, right? But now you have colors filled across the region that the line covers. So the pros, right, is to compare how different segments make up a more extensive set of data over time. Also, area charts are excellent for showing relationships between different sets of data and the scale of related data. It also makes it easy to read and scan research findings. And the cons are it becomes difficult to read area charts when two or more groupings are being tracked. Also, they are not a great option when you have more detailed analysis required, and they can get complicated due to overlapping areas. So use area charts when you're trying to express data as a total time periods to compare. You're trying to communicate overall trend, not individual values. And you have multiple data series with path to whole relationships or a cumulative series of values. So let's make an area chart. So I'll come on to our slide, right? I'll just edit our existing chart currently. So I'll duplicate this. I'll call this area chart. So I click on this, right? What I'll do, I'll just come on to the vSpin. Next to the line chart, you have area chart. So I'll just choose that. And you can see, right, it has changed our chart to an area chart. You have colors under this. And you can customize this, right, further. But we'll look at these in subsequent sections. So let's go back to our slide. And go to the next chart. So we have scatter plots and maps. This is the last section of visual we'll look at. So look at scatter plots. We'll look at the bubble plot, which is a variation of scatter plots, and we'll look at the shape map. So let's look at scatter plots. It's used to display values for typically two variables for a set of data. And they are used to observe relationships between variables. That's an example. So it's great to understand correlation, right? And this will help you to interpret scatter plots. So if you look at the first chart here, right? The first chart here, you see that the points, right? They slope right to left. They're showing you positive correlation. The second chart here, right? These green dots here, they slope from left to right. That's negative correlation. So positive correlation, right? So correlation in general is from -1 to +1, right? So when you have like 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, close to 1, those are all positive correlation, strong correlation, positive correlation. And when you have -7, -0.7, -0.8, like that, close to -1, those are all strong negative correlation. Then when you have values close to 0, you have no correlation, right? And it will look something like this, where you have no pattern. So when it slopes from right to left, positive correlation, slopes from left to right, negative. When you have randomization of the points, that's more like no correlation. So let's go on to the next slide. So the pros of scatter plots, it provides a visual and statistical means to test the strength of relationships between two variables. It's also great for overviews, for finding outliers, and for showing patterns between some dimensions. And the cons are, it can't provide the precise extent of association. So you can't tell from the plot what the exact correlation is. And lastly, it does not indicate the quantitative measure of the relationship between two variables. So scatter plots are used, right, when you have two variables that pair together, and also when you want to observe and show relationships between two numeric values. So let's see a demo. We'll look at quantity versus sales. All right, let's look at this. So let's go to Power BI desktop and create a scatter plot. So hit the plus icon, and I'll call this scatter plots. So I come onto the VIX pane, right? And you'll see this chart here, right? Scatter chart. So you're trying to work with. So I'll click on it. And I'll expand this, make it bigger. So here I have to look at the how quantity and sales, how they relate together, right? What's the relationship between them? Is there a correlation, positive, negative, or there's none? So I'll click on my chart. On the x-axis, that's here, I'll put quantity on the x-axis. And I'll put sales on the y-axis. So if you note the chart, right, it's kind of showing us just 1 point, right? 1 point. And just want to done somewhere else. And then it's done somewhere else. Yeah, so currently, by default, right, it aggregates the value as a sum. But I don't want that. Don't summarize them, just leave them like that. And then what I can do is on the values, I'll bring in, let's bring in what now to the values. Let's bring in subcategories to the values. You know what? Let's aggregate this, but then so I'll put quantity on x-axis and sales on y-axis. And then I'll bring in subcategory to the values. Yeah, so it's showing me value for each subcategory. I think you have multiple subcategories here. Then next, on the legend, I'll bring in category on the legend. So all the orange points, right? Technology subcategories, all the navy blue colors, office supply subcategories, all the blue colors have furniture subcategories. So cool. For the size, right? For the size of the bars, what should we use for this? So let me see. We could use count of the orders, right? So order ID, order line ID, count of orders. Let me see if this will work. Yeah, awesome. Count of orders. So I want to count the orders that are called in each subcategory. So for example, this blinders category, you have 1523, the very last value as the count of orders, right? Cool. So next thing I can do is quick, sorry, you're trying to do a scatter plot, right? I'm going ahead of myself. So for now, let's stick to this. Apologies. Let's stick to this. So this here is our scatter plot, right? Sales by quantity. And you could add a regression line if you want to. Trend line. Let's see. You add a line if you want to, right? To show you the direction. So currently, this sloping from right to left. This is a positive correlation, but we can't tell the number of the correlation, right? It's just showing us that this line is showing us it's sloping from right to left. So the points, they are a bit dispersed. So it's not a strong correlation, but it seems to be a positive correlation. So overall, as quantity is increasing, right? So at the initial point, you have low quantity, low sales, and then as you go higher, 3,000 or thereabouts, you have some values that are high. You have high sale values there, and then it declines a bit. So overall, I think it's a positive correlation, but it's not so strong. I think it's a weak or medium correlation. So this scatter plot, right? This scatter plot. But then back to the slide, right? You also have a variation of the scatter plot. That's the bubble plot. So you can add a new dimension, right? To your scatter plot. So if you're showing two values, you can add a size dimension or a color dimension to get more insights. So let's do that. So I'll put off this trend line. I don't need it. I'll put it off. And then what I can do is I come on to my chart, right? So currently I have subcategory quantity sales. Legend, I'll look at this by category. Legend category. And the size, like I said, a measure for count of sales. Bulk orders. Okay, total orders. Let me see. Yeah, okay, let's do the same thing as the count row. So total orders, I'll bring it to the sides, right? So count the orders for each subcategory. Then one last thing I can do is on the play axis. You have a play axis here. I can bring in a time value, right? So maybe it could be years, months, just something that relates to time. So I'll come onto my dates table and I'll bring in the months, end of month there. So I'll put it here. So when I add the time value, right, I can play this over time and see how it's changing. But before that, I'll come on here and turn on the labels. So I can tell the different subcategories, right? For example, this blinder subcategory, this paper, this storage, this chairs, just like that, right? So if you want to look at how this change over time, I could come on here and hit this play button, right? Click on play. And you can see how it's changing over time, right? So this is June. Let me do it again from scratch. So February, March, April, just like that, right? As time goes on, it's showing you how it's changing over time. So you could see how all the subcategories, the sales and quantity, how they vary over time, right? Month by month. So initially, you had blinders, it was small. Let's look at blinders. It was small, right? Let's follow blinders. That's why I saw, blinders, right? Initially, it was small. It's growing. It grows, come back, right? And then eventually, where you see blinders is now here, now large. So it has a large quantity, not very, not the highest sales, right? But it has a large quantity and a fairly large sales also. So you can track each subcategory, how they change over time. That's this bubble. It is a bubble plot, right? Initially, we had a scatter plot, but you can modify it and get a bubble plot by adding a color and size dimension to your scatter plot. So let's go back to the slide and look at the last visual for today. So let's look at the shape map. So you have different kinds of maps, right? So here we'll look at the shape map. So the shape map in Power BI is used to compare regions on a map by coloring them differently. And by default, right, is in preview. You need to enable it before you can use it. Last I checked. So example of the shape map, right? You have a shape map of the US here, showing you states in the US and values across the states. So the darker regions, higher values. The lighter regions, right, lower value. The darker the color, the higher the value. So the pros of the shape map, right? You can customize it. So I could do a shape map for Nigeria, for Lagos, as long as I can create a JSON file of that map, right? Which is easy to do. Or you can see it, you see templates online. Once you get a JSON file for any location, you can visualize it, right? The shape map in Power BI. And also the shape map is simple to use. And the cons, right? You can't drill down on the shape map. And also you can't add other layers of maps to it. So for a shape map, right, you can use it to show the distribution of a variable across geographic regions. You can also create custom maps in Power BI using the shape map. So let's create a shape map, right, in Power BI showing sales by state. So Power BI desktop, make a new shape. I'll call this shape map. So like I said, right, the shape map is in preview. So to activate the shape map, you need to come on to File on Power BI desktop and come down to Options and Settings and come here to Options. So when you come to Options, you come down to Preview Features, right here, Preview Features. So you click on this. So here, right, you can see that currently I have shape map visual checked, but by default it'll be unchecked, right? So you come on here and check it. So I think once you check it, right, you need to close. So you save your file, close Power BI and open it up again. And the shape map visual should appear on your Viz pane, right? So this is a shape map visual here. Currently it's here, but by default, you won't see it here in your visual. You have to enable it in the preview features section. Then close your file and open it back. And you see the shape visual. So once you have it here, right, you click on the shape visual and it comes on here to the canvas. So I want to look at sales by states, or let's do profits by states. Yeah, profit by state. Let's do sales by state. So I come on here, I come onto the location table and I'll bring in states, right? So for some popular regions like the US, Canada, etc., by default, the shape map would recognize those locations. But if you're in remote places like maybe African countries, you need to save your own JSON file before you can use the shape map, right? You have to get the JSON file for your location. Then you add it to Power BI, the shape map, and then create the visual. But by default, right, this is US data. So if you just put state here on location, and it will recognize the locations by default. So you can see, right, you just show the shape of the US immediately. So currently everywhere the same color. So to show the graduation and the values, I come on to sales, click on sales. So the color saturation, right? So you see now showing you what the darker values are the places that have higher values, right? The lighter values are those that have lesser values. So that's a shape map, right? You could do some other customization to the map, but I'll just leave it at this for now. So this is shape mapping Power BI, and you can visualize your geographical information, right, using a shape map. you have several other kinds of map. You have the field map, you have the default Power BI map, etc. Right? You also have so one thing I didn't go into, right? So for example, you can see that the visuals here, they are limited, right? Not all the visuals are here. So you have what's called the custom the marketplace, right? So if you come down to this icon here, you'll see this option to get more visuals. If I click on the icon, right, you'll see get more visuals. So you could import from a file. You have file visual files online you could download and use, right? Or you could get from the Power BI marketplace. So I come on here and click on get more visuals. So it opens up the marketplace. I think you need to be signed to a Power BI account for you to access this, right? When you come on here, you can see different kinds of visuals, right? Different kinds of visuals. So let's say, for example, I wanted to use a custom visual, maybe a word cloud, for example, is a word cloud. I could choose this, for example. Let's see if this works. So I click on that, right? And it will be imported from the marketplace to my Power BI desktop file. So I say add, right? I'll click on add. So it might take some time, like a few seconds, and then you see it on your visual pane. So it says import successful, right? Click OK. So when you look here, right, you can see the word cloud visual I just brought in. So I could use this, for example. Let's say I want to visualize words. I click on this, and I come on to where can I have multiple words now? I don't think I have a column for text here. Let me see. Product ID. No. Product name. Okay, this works actually. So cool. You can see some words, right? Xerox has more frequency, etc., etc. So if for some reason, right, the visuals on Power BI by default, you don't have what you're looking for, you can explore the marketplace and see if you can find the visual that suits your needs. So time is fast spent. I think we'll stop here for today. So before we round up, anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand or type in the chat if you have any questions. So if you have questions, you can type in the chat or you raise your hands. Gamma says no question. That's awesome. So it looks like we all followed along. So if you have no questions, right, I think we can round up for today. So thank you all for your time, and I hope you all have a great night rest and an awesome week ahead.